Good morning. It is 4:40 in the morning when everybody else is asleep and I'm awake, and the dogs are also kind of asleep. So we're starting finally the review process and the video review process of the Monolith by Monoprice THX AAA desktop amplifier with 2 DACs and 2 THX modules. That's basically the title. Now look, before we start, I wanted to show you this awful manual again. It it does a terrible job of explaining what each thing is. I highlighted some of the things just for my amusement. But in order to get through some of the menu systems, it's like trying to crack a safe in 30 seconds. That's the type of pressure. I will give you an example. Shelf EQ. The shelf EQ is the equivalent of the bass and treble controls on a conventional amplifier, but with more control over the amount of gain and the specific frequencies. The LF gain value applies to all frequencies below the selected frequency, while the HF gain value applies to all frequencies above the selected frequency. Perform the following steps to set the shelf EQ. Now, the declaration of the shelf EQ, pretty clear cut, no problem. But here's how you set it. Step 1. Momentarily press the menu button. The display shows EQ. 2. Momentarily press and the enter button. The display will show shelf EQ. 3. Momentarily press the enter button. The display will show shelf EQ with a pointer to the left of the LF gain. 4. Rotate the value knob clockwise or counterclockwise to increase or decrease the LF gain value from 6 dB to negative 6 dB in 0.5 dB increments. 5. Momentarily press the enter button. The display will change to show shelf EQ, and the pointer will move to the left of the freak label. 6. Rotate the value knob clockwise or counterclockwise to increase or decrease the freak value from 60 Hz to 200 Hz in 10 Hz increments. 7. Momentarily press the enter button. The display will change to show shelf EQ, and the pointer will move to the left of the HF gain label. 8. Rotate the value knob clockwise or counterclockwise to increase or decrease the HF gain value from negative 6 dB to plus 6 dB in 0.5 dB increments. 9. Momentarily press the enter button. The display will change to show shelf EQ, and the pointer will move to the left of the freak label. 10. Rotate the value knob clockwise or counterclockwise to increase or decrease the freak value from 5 Hz to 12 kHz in 1 kHz increments. 11. Yes, there's page 2. 11. Momentarily press the enter button. The display will cycle back to show shelf EQ with a pointer to the left of the LF gain. 12. Momentarily press the menu button 3 times to return to the home screen. Alternatively, wait 30 seconds and the display will automatically return to the home screen. The home screen will display an EQ label indicating that EQ is enabled. Note: once a value is changed in any of the above steps, it will take effect whether or not the enter button is pressed. There is no cancel function to abort changes that have been made. Right, so I will not remember any of this. I have no idea what the hell Monoprice was thinking when they implemented this piece of crap menu system. Are you serious? This is how you think people are going to spend their time? Fiddling with those 2 little knobs between the volume knob, or 2 little buttons between the volume knob, and trying to figure this out? This will drive a person insane. Compared to the RME ADI2 DAC, and I have the manual for that here. This thing is a joy to read. Whoever wrote this manual should be given a Nobel Prize for writing. This is just amazing. I've highlighted, I've notated, I've written, I've got stickies everywhere because everything makes sense. They explain step by step. This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is why you should do it. This is how to do it. This is how other companies do it, and why our method is better. And it's simple. Everything is so damn simple in the RME. And Monoprice, I don't know if they were trying to copy RME in trying to implement some of these things, but they should have hired the guy who wrote the manual, number 1. And number 2, they should have not entered that menu system. All right, that's out of the way. Let's go. The comparison today is going to be between the Monolith and the JDS Labs Element, or the Element amp DAC. They're $100 difference, roughly $120 difference between the two. The JDS is cheaper, and it's not balanced, it's not THX, nothing like that. So let's try to figure out if there's a sound difference between the two. So I've set up an A/B switch, and I have to tell you, it took me like 15 minutes to set this up because my Mac Pro from 2013 is a piece of junk. It's a piece of junk because now the USB, there are only 4, by the way, there are only 4 USB ports on this thing, and they randomly decide when they want to recognize my amps. So, you know, I'm constantly playing spin the wheel with the USB port, trying to unplug all, plug them all back in, doesn't recognize it, unplug them all, plug them back in, doesn't recognize it, do it over and over again until randomly it just decides, okay, I'll recognize this DAC now. I just don't know, I don't understand what the problem is. So that's an issue. Anyway, it's here, it finally worked, it's got both the Monolith and the JDS Labs, so good, hopefully that remains. So let's start with the Monolith. That's set on number 2, number 1 is JDS Labs. And let's start with mountains. Now I'm going to try to control volume, master volume with Spotify. Starting with mountains. And volume on the Monolith is -30.5. Oh, and by the way, I'm using the HD 660S. No, up to -19.5. So what am I looking for? I have no idea. Clarity, I guess. You know, as you know, that there's a slow build-up to this, and the air conditioning just came on, so if you hear that, don't worry about that. All that matters is that you hear my luscious voice at 4:45 in the morning. Well, it's 4:45 for whenever you watch this. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead because this is getting boring now. So it's the middle of the song where all the instruments come in. Okay, so I increase the volume to -13.5, and what I'm looking for when all the complexity comes in, because that's really what matters, is whether there's depth to the song, whether there's layering, good separation of all the instruments, clarity above all else, and if there is any sort of graininess to the sound. Now, the 660S is a very, very good headphone, and it's got its own Sennheiser tune to it, as we all know about Sennheiser, but it's a fairly neutral headphone. It's really easy to use with benchmarking, so that's what we're doing. So did I hear the layering and the separation and the clarity? Yeah, I have no complaints about that on the Monolith. It's clearly clear. It's clear. No muddiness, no graininess, no itchy, no scratchy, not the cartoon. None of that. It's just is. And even at the higher volume of -13.5, so, you know, we started off low, then we went to medium, and now it's -13.5. And, you know, it doesn't change the sound characteristic at all. Excuse me. So it doesn't change the sound characteristic at all, the higher the volume, which is essential, in my opinion, for a reference class amplifier. Now, I've said this before, it's not a reference amplifier. Just because it has THX written on it doesn't mean that it's a reference amplifier, but it's trying to get there. And that's one of the big things, is that the higher the volume, the higher the distortion. That should not happen. The amplifier should just be flat. It shouldn't introduce grain, it shouldn't introduce distortion, it shouldn't color the music, it should just present it, and if you want it at a higher volume, it should just give it to you at the higher volume without doing anything else. And so that does a fairly good job. Now let's do the same thing with the Element. Tell me that you still recognize it. Oh, you do. Good. And I'm going to put this up to about 9 o'clock. And it's up at about 2 o'clock. We're in the middle of the song, everything is coming in. Okay, I do hear something. And let's try it again. Back to the monolith. Negative 9.5. So I'm going to start between 1 minute 45 seconds, not between, at 1 minute 45 seconds. And we'll listen to that portion. Back to the JDS Labs. Yeah, okay, so there is in fact a difference. There is definitely a difference. And it's hard to explain. The mono price has a clearer presentation, but it's not that the JDS has a muddy presentation. It doesn't. It's also clear. It's the way that they present the clarity. It's so, either it's clear or it's not clear. I understand, but listen to me here for a sec. So the JDS Labs is clear, but it's not transparent. Whereas the monoprice is both clear and transparent. Oh my God, does this help at all? No, it doesn't. Here's what I heard. Repeated listening to the song midway when the organ and all the instruments come in. What monoprice shows me is everything that the JDS Labs does, plus the separation of all the instruments. The JDS Labs gets a little bit muddy with trying to present all the individual instruments. Now, it's not a muddy amplifier at all. It's just not as transparent as the monoprice, where the monoprice gives me all the instruments one by one, presents it as it comes. The Element has kind of a little bit of a difficulty presenting everything at the same time, and all the frequencies are coming in. It's just there's no real separation anymore. So what I hear is clear. There's no graininess, nothing like that, but there's kind of a melding of the frequencies just a little bit, and I lose out on the individuality of each instrument, whereas the monoprice gives me all the individuality. The higher I go, I mean, I'm now at negative 9.5, and the tonality hasn't changed. It just increases the volume, and it provides that song to me at just a higher volume without coloring it in any way. Does that kind of make sense? So You know, it's really difficult to describe the differences between amplifiers. And I said this before when I did the whole PowerPoint presentation thing on Google presentation, that I have no idea how do you even start talking about amplifiers. You know, it's a very difficult task because you're talking about a lot of times minute differences. Now, if I were supposed to compare the monoprice with a $20 amplifier from Amazon, look, I have little doubt. I have no doubt that I could tell the difference between that. But because the JDS Labs is so good, it's harder when you have two amplifiers that are really, really good. But THX, you're trying to scratch your head, go, okay, so what is THX supposed to sound like? See, that's the thing. It's not supposed to sound like anything. It's supposed to be clear, no distortion. That's all. That's it. But if you already have an amplifier that is low distortion, now you're trying to figure out which is the lower distortion, and our ears and our minds don't work that way. When you come down to 0.00 whatever of total harmonic distortion, THD, you are not able to tell the difference. A computer can, because it's got software to analyze all the frequencies, and it has the ability, the processing power, to figure out what is what. Our brains don't work that way. We listen to things within a certain frequency range, and we do not understand the minute differences. And I will tell you why. Look, even RME says this. I've been saying this before I got the RME, but RME even says this. And where is it? Put a note in here somewhere. Okay, so anyway, what RME says, I don't want to waste your time, but RME says the same thing when they talk about their EQ, their 5-band EQ. Now, they said they could put in a 10-band EQ or a 20-band EQ, and they didn't. And the reason they didn't do it is because that's not how people listen. You cannot tell the minute differences amongst the frequency range. And there are some people, you know, like Metal 571, who says, you know, a little dB here, a little dB there, you know, fine, whatever. I'm not gonna sit here and argue with nothing, really. But most people can't tell the difference. That's why most people have such a hard time EQing properly, because they, you know, 1 dB, 2 dB, 3 dB, and they're like, I don't hear a difference. And so they go and increase until they can hear a difference, and by then they've already destroyed the song because of the EQ. That's why people cannot properly EQ, because you can't hear the minute differences. And so now that you're talking about minute differences between these two amplifiers, you're like, okay, which one has less harmonic distortion? Which one has more clarity? They're both clear. I just, you know, it depends on your ear, depends on the song, depends on the headphone. And I've got good headphones. I've got decent ears. I got average ears, I would think. And, you know, I've got the same song playing, and one sounds a little bit better than the other. It's not night and day. Okay, let's go to Haim Want You Back, because that is vocal centric, and we have the JDS Labs plugged in. Okay, so that is very smooth. Let's go to Monolith. Here we go again. Ha 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 ha. Okay, back to the element. Okay, so on Want You Back, there's kind of a difference, and then there's a big difference. So the kind of the difference is the tonality is almost the same. It's smooth on both. It sounds great on both. There's no peakiness, there's no harshness, there's no graininess. Okay, so that's both win on that equally. Where it comes down to, where the major difference is the separation. So the Monolith has better separation amongst the vocalist and the instrument than the JDS Labs. Whereas the JDS Labs does present everything clearly, it just doesn't separate as well as the Monolith. So what do I mean by that? There's a big difference, in my opinion, between clarity and separation. Clarity is something comes out without distortion, without adding any sort of flavor to the music. And I hate using the word flavor because there's somebody I work with that uses the word flavor constantly to describe his personal emotions, and it's really irritating because that's not how the word is supposed to be used. So pretend I didn't say flavor. Let's just say that it's not supposed to color the sound whatsoever. Okay, so that's clarity. It just brings it to you straight ahead. Separation is, with that clarity, you have a lot of different frequencies, right? You have low frequency, mid frequency, high frequency. Generally speaking, you have those three. Or if you were the RME, you have 5. And it's supposed to separate those things clearly. So you know when the low is happening, you know when the middle is happening, you know when the high to mid is happening, you know when the highs are happening. And all those instruments that have those particular frequencies are separate. They don't brush up next to each other. They don't mess each other up. That's what I call separation. So even though it could be what's coming out is clear, it's simply not separated. It seems like, 6 on one hand and half a dozen on the other, and it may be that way, but that's the best way I can describe it. And to my ears, there is, in fact, a difference between separation and clarity, the definitions. So the clarity, both do great. Separation, Monolith does better, and it's noticeably better on Haim. Was it as noticeably better on Mountains? I don't think so, but that's probably because of just the type of instruments and the way that it was mastered. I mean, everything just comes together, right? In Mountains, it's supposed to come together. It's a confluence of the organ and all the other instruments jam-packed together. But the Monolith does present things a little bit more separated, a little bit more nuanced than the JDS Labs. It's not huge, but it's, I have to be honest, there is a little bit of difference. With Haim, a bit more different, and noticeably so. How about we go to Flight from the City? And what do I have it plugged in? Okay, I have JDS Labs plugged in. Here we go. Very smooth and everything, but did I hear the micro details or not? Let me go back. Okay, I'm going to switch to the Monolith. Okay, so what I'm listening for is the micro details. This is what this song is really, really good at, Fly from the City. Because the micro details are the, what my chair has been doing, if you're listening. Yeah, that squeaky thing. That's a micro detail in the song. And it's just, it's something. It's just the picking up, if I had something to pick up, picking up this cap from the Dragonfly Red. I'm picking this up in the middle of the song and hearing it scraping the wood here. Can you hear it? That's a micro detail that comes out. That should come out, okay? Now on the Monolith, it does come out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back a couple seconds. There's a specific micro detail that I want to try to listen to. And I know it's there, I've heard it, I just want to see which one picks it up better. Let's go back to 16 seconds, and I'm on the Monolith. Okay, I picked up I know where it is. Okay, so back to 16 seconds. I'm going to switch to JDS Labs. Here we go. Maximum volume on Spotify. Okay, so the micro detail is on second 21 of this song. And the micro detail is basically, it's like a drip, a singular drip from a faucet. That's what it sounds like to me. It's just something, and it only happens once. They both pick it up. And they both pick it up similarly. But I can't tell the difference. There is that micro detail. Now, what about the micro detail about the chair? Not mine, but the one in the song. Well, since we've got the JDS Labs on right now, let's try it. Let's see when I can pick it up and what it sounds like. Maximum volume on Spotify, about noon on the JDS. I hear the chair at 3 seconds in. I hear the little bit of the electricity in the background about 5 or 6 seconds in. Let's switch to the Monolith. Here we go. Let me start over again. Okay, back to the JDS Labs. I just want to make sure that that was plugged in properly. Try again. Back to the Monolith. This will all make sense in a minute. This is the last time I'm going to switch on this song. Bring this down because it's going to blow my eardrums. Here we go. Oops. Okay. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. I just had to walk away for a minute and see if I could find an audio file, one of those hoity-toity audio files somewhere here that I could choke them with an audio cable. There is such minor difference between these two. There is a difference, but it's so minor. It's just. So here's what I was doing back and forth on this song. I was trying to look for the micro detail in the chair movement, and I was trying to figure out, is there a clear difference? Could I say this sounds clearer or it sounds more pleasurable? One of the two. And the answer is no. I thought for a moment that the Monolith actually gave me a clearer presentation of the chair moving around 3 seconds. And when I turned up the volume again on the Monolith, I heard it, between 2 and 3 seconds, so a little bit sooner. Where I had thought that I heard it at exactly 3 seconds on the JDS Labs. A difference of a half a second, guys. That's what we're talking about. So I went back and listened to the JDS. No, it comes at the same time. Is it the same volume? It's about the same volume. Is it the same clarity? It's about the same clarity. Is it the same amount of separation? It's about the same amount of separation. Is it a little bit better overall on the Monolith? Yes, it is a little bit better overall on the Monolith. How much better? I have no idea. If I were supposed to give you an estimate, I will estimate this. You see this? That's how much better. That is my estimation. If this is worth an additional $150 to you, go do it. Okay? If you're trying to eke out every last little bit morsel of stuff from your music, okay, go ahead, do it. That's your money. But I can't hear the difference. And this is the third song we've tried this on. And every song is slightly different from the one above it. So, why? What the hell? The JDS Labs is a great amplifier. I've said it from the day that I plugged it in and you first saw it and I first spoke about it on my channel 70 videos ago, whatever it's been. The Monolith is a great amplifier too. But people online keep talking about how fantastic how fantastic THX is. Now you could say, well, you gotta try the original 789, man. Look, I have tried the 789 with the Monolith. I haven't done it on video yet. It will happen. You just have to take my word for it for the moment. They're practically the same sound. The difference between the two is inconsequential. I mean, it's like a difference between this and the Monolith. Is there a slight difference? Slight. Very, 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 very slight. And on a good day, maybe you'll be able to tell the difference. Okay? So, great amplifier, great amplifier. Easy amplifier, pain in the neck with the menu system. Clarity, about the same. Separation, that's a little bit better in the separation. Micro detail, about the same micro detail. There you go. Now, I have FLAC files. And I do have Flight from the City on FLAC. So let's play that. Open with foobar. I hate foobar for Mac. Okay. So I have foobar on Flight from the City, FLAC file, with the JDS, with the Monolith playing. And let's see what happens. Definitely clearer presentation on the FLAC file than on the Spotify. A little bit more depth to it, a little bit more substance to it. The Spotify sound more flattened, more compressed than the FLAC, because it is, but not by a tremendous degree. It's noticeable, but it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the song. But do I hear all the same micro detail? I hear exactly when I heard it on Spotify. Let's switch to JDS Labs. Okay. So it's same micro detail, same all sorts of that stuff, all sorts of that stuff, same stuff. What the difference is, the Monolith sounds a little bit more full, a little bit more not clear, it's about the same clarity, more separation. So with the greater separation, even though it's not a tremendous amount, there's still separation. You get the sense that there's more to the song because there's more coming out of the song, right? JDS Labs does a very, very good job. It's just not, it doesn't present everything separated. It sounds, I'm going to say muddy, but I don't mean muddy. It just sounds more glazed over than the Monolith. The Monolith just kind of gives you all the little bits and pieces of the instruments and of the frequencies, whereas the JDS Labs does give you all that stuff, but it's just not delineated. It's more smoothened out. It's flattened out, you know? And if you're looking for the micro details, if you're trying to figure out, if you're trying to say to yourself, I want to hear every single instrument, each separated, the way it's recorded, then the Monolith definitely does take the lead on that. Is it huge? No, but it's noticeable, in my opinion. So that's the review between the JDS Labs and the Monolith. People who want a THX amplifier are going to get a THX amplifier. Nothing's going to stop them from doing that. No amount of reason, no amount of testing is going to convince them not to get a THX amplifier. Okay, that's fine. I mean, I have two, so obviously. But I do this for reviews, right? Is there a big difference between the JDS Labs and the Monolith? No, it's not a huge difference. And if you're out to buy an amplifier to enjoy, then you got to just pick the one that you enjoy. You don't pick the one that audiophiles say it's the most amazing thing out there. It has THX branding and hi-fi and sticker and all that. That's not, that shouldn't guide you. What should guide you is, does it do what it claims to do? Is it affordable? And does it fit into your listening experience or the type of listening experience you want to have? Those should be the only considerations. Nothing else matters. Right, Shay? Nothing else matters. And when you have to compare between the JDS Labs and the Monolith, there's a $150 difference, more or less. And oh good, my dog just threw up. So there's a difference between the two. I'll be back. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Do you think it's possible the dogs are like, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to throw up now? Anyway, we were talking about the minor differences. When you're talking about $150 difference, I can't make that judgment call for you. I try not to make judgment calls about how you spend, whatever you do. That's not my business. But I think that you should be fully aware before you jump on the whole audiophile train and say, oh my God, this is so much better. It's like paying $5,000 for a cable. A friend and I we were talking yesterday, and we were amused by the cost of audio cables. And $1,200 for an audio cable that looks like any other normal audio cable, but apparently it has electrons that were specially raised and grown in a laboratory, and those electrons obey the laws of audiophiles better than any other electrons. In fact, they were nurtured and suckled into this world by an audiophile of great rapport. I'm lying, but you know what? That's all I should have said. That's how ridiculous the price was. When you listen to audiophiles, you're going to go bankrupt. When you listen to audiophiles and step into their world, all of a sudden, reality doesn't make any sense anymore, and now up is down and down is left. That's how audiophiles work, and I dislike audiophiles for a very particular reason, because they peddle snake oil, and then they call you out for it for not accepting their snake oil. They get into all these ridiculous arguments about their version of the snake oil is better than anybody else's version of the snake oil. And as you people are discerning, you should know that those audiophiles are full of crap. When they talk about THX AAA, they are not necessarily full of crap, because there is a difference, but they're not being completely honest with you. I have yet to see a review of the THX, either the Monolith or the Mass Drop, but either of those two, with any other amplifier. I think this is the first review online comparing live, essentially, comparing back and forth A and B between two amplifiers here, between the JDS Labs and the Monolith. Have you seen anybody do a review like this between the Mass Drop and another clean, clear amplifier? I haven't. You've heard people sit there and they give you their conclusions. You look into their face and they've done a great opener and it looks so professional. They have great lighting and they have a great camera and they're attractive people and they give you their conclusions. And then you accept them and then you move on. It's like, oh, I really need that THX amplifier because that wonderful person and that professional lighting and that wonderful music and intro, and they have 100,000 subscribers. Oh, they do this for a living. Surely what they hear is absolutely correct. That's not how life works. Look, I was thinking of a couple of reviewers who review audio stuff making this rant just now. Those are wonderful people. I love their content. I have subscribed to their content for a while. I think they're really interesting. I love their takes on their views on things. But I don't accept their views just because they say it. And every one of the people who has listened to the 789 and recommends the 789, all those major ones, have yet to compare the 789 A and B with other amplifiers. So tell me, how can they possibly explain to you that the THX, either one, doesn't matter, is substantially better than any other? Do the live test. Tell me what you're hearing, because that's really the controlling test, isn't it? When you as the reviewer are forced to sit there and record yourself listening from one or the other, and you promise to be honest, tell me the difference. Now, you may like one more than the other. You may prefer one more than the other, and that's a subjective thing. That's totally cool. Be subjective about it. It's okay. You can say you like the THX more because it just sounds right to you. That's a very subjective statement. It has no definition whatsoever scientifically. You cannot substantively inform me what that means so that I also can hear it the way you hear. I can't do that. You can't do that. I understand, no fault. But at least be honest about it. I just like the sound of that more. Great. Your ears, your listening preference, the headphones that you have, your environment, all that stuff, you enjoy it a little bit more. Maybe it's because you spend more money on it. You want to convince yourself. Whatever it is, great. You like that amplifier more. No problem. But don't turn around and then say that's the best amplifier around. No, it's not. It's not the best amplifier around. When you go on YouTube and you're looking for reviews about any product, inevitably you will run into a video that says the best whatever. And when I run to those videos, I skip over them because I hate those videos with a passion. Those individuals are liars, they're dishonest, they have no idea what the hell they're talking about, and you should never listen to those people. Ever. Never. And unfortunately, they get the subscribership, they become big YouTube stars, they become big YouTube personalities, they earn a lot of money by doing that sort of nonsense. The best whatever. People just want to get to it, right? People said that my reviews are too long. I'm sorry if my reviews are too long for you, but my reviews give you the step-by-step process and you get the thinking process, and then hopefully you understand where I'm coming from and you understand what my biases are and what my outlook is, so that you can differentiate what my personal feelings are versus what I actually objectively hear and what you actually objectively hear when you're doing these sound tests with me. Hopefully you're doing that with me. Right? That's the biggest difference between me and the other people, I think. The other differences, but when I tell you there is a minor difference between this and the monolith, believe it, there's a minor difference. Which one is more enjoyable? The JDS Labs actually sounds probably a little bit smoother because it glosses over some of those frequencies than the monolith. But the monolith gives you all that additional detail. When I mean all that, I mean a little bit more additional detail, which you may find enjoyable. They both sound clear. They both have very, very low distortion. And in fact, if you compare the total harmonic distortion of the JDS Labs to the monolith, they're practically the same, right? Like I said, when you're coming down to 0.00 whatever, it's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant because you can't hear the difference. Now, you could say you didn't test the THX. Look, man, we'll get there. The mass drop. We'll get there when we get there. Let's not rush ahead. THX technology is great, but it's not the end-all be-all, and it's not the only way to bring you clarity. Good DAC amps that are well integrated, that have good circuitry, those are just as good for everybody, for normal people. Now, if you're in a studio and you're like, I need the best possible, I need that THX sound, and you're producing and you're mastering or whatever, okay, then you can justify that $150 hike. I think you can, because you're doing a professional job, and you may need the additional functionality that thing has, which, right? You may need to break the code, the nuclear codes here, in order to make that function. That's cool. If you do a professional job, no problem. But if you're a normal person, you just want to enjoy your music, and you've heard all this nonsense about THX AAA, blah, 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 it's so fantastic, and I have to go on eBay and spend $800 to get the mass drop THX, don't do that. You're wasting money. That is not reasonable at all. If you want THX sound, because you want THX sound, great. You've got the monolith, which is, gets you everything you want. We did the price breakdown and everything before, but get that instead of wasting money on a 789 at double, triple the price on eBay. But if you just want to listen to clean music, and you want to enjoy it, and you don't want to break the bank, the JDS Labs is fantastic. Very clear. Okay, so this is getting a little rambly now, if it wasn't before. Ultimately, what's the conclusion? The the monolith THX AAA is slightly better than the JDS Labs. It's got more separation of the instruments. The clarity is about the same. There's no distortion in either one. Higher volumes on this, higher volume on the monolith, same thing, right? No distortion. The only difference I can tell is the separation of the instruments, which is slightly better on the THX than it is on the JDS Labs. So that's, if you want to justify spending the additional money, that would be the justification for spending the additional money. Beyond that, I don't see anything else that really differentiates the two. All that other menu nonsense, look, man, if you're going to go through it every time, because you're not going to remember the codes here, every time the 12-step process, it probably is easier to break an addiction. This is the 12-step addiction process by Monoprice. It's just, you could probably break your meth habit faster than you can figure out how the hell this works. Any of these menus work. Thank you, Monoprice. You made it a lot easier to be not a meth addict anymore. If you want to justify it, that's the reason justified. It's a separation of instruments, which is slightly better. Other than that, they're about the same. Hopefully this has been of some help. If you have any questions about the amplifiers or the testing process, let me know. I will try to rectify that. The next test is going to be between the THX, two THXs, as you know I have both of them, the mass drop and the monolith, and see if there's a difference. I'm not going to hear a difference, but I shouldn't say that. I don't think I'm going to be able to hear a difference, but let's see. That's going to happen in a couple of days. And then we are going to try on different headphones and try to figure out if the monolith, I keep combining mass drop and monolith, mono drop. If the monolith changes the sound characteristic compared to each headphone. But we already know that headphones have their own tuning. So let's see. Maybe it will be a fun test. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you have any comments, let me know. One question I do have for some people, if you know, how do I fix my USB problem? So here's the issue. I have 4 USB hubs, and a couple of them one of them is powered with a 12 volt, only because it needs the power to charge. I'm not charging anything, but let's leave that aside. And I have probably, I don't know, 12, 15 amps DACs plugged in through the USBs. And every once in a while, my computer will not recognize it, even though it's on and everything, and I have to unplug the USB hub itself, plug it back in, plug it in, back and forth until finally it just randomly decides to recognize it. It didn't happen before I got the USB hubs. Like when I only had 2 or 3 or 4 amps, it was fine, no issues, and now it started to have a problem. And by the way, none of my amps are on. None of my DACs are on until I use that specific DAC amp combination. When I use it, I turn it on, then it should pop up because that's the only one I'm using. But it gives me a list of all the other ones that are in the memory because they've been recognized previously. And the one that I want to use, like the JDS Labs this morning, wasn't being recognized. I had to take the USB cable in and out multiple times before it finally randomly decided to recognize it. If anybody has experience about this and knows of a solution, let me know. I'd really like to fix this problem because it's a little frustrating. The alternative for me is just to plug in all the hubs into another hub and then plug that into one of the USB sockets. Maybe it's one of the USB sockets or the ports on my Mac. And if that's the issue, then it's much easier just to unplug one USB hub that's connected to all the other USB hubs than to plug out, 4 USB hubs, whatever. But that's another issue altogether. Okay, help me solve my problem. Thank you so much. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. If you have any comments, leave them down below. And we will continue the review process of the Monolith THX AAA with the upcoming review between it and the Mass Drop THX 789. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thanks.